You know, every so often, I think that there is an obvious question that a lot of people take for granted. And so the question that I really want to talk about today is, what is the Revolutionary Army's plan? So we obviously know that the Revolutionary Army is fighting against the world government, but it was explicitly clarified during the Reverie who their actual target was, and it's not the world government in general. The world government obviously is made up of entities such as Cypherpol, all the various countries, as well as the Marines. They're more focused on, their target is the world nobles or the celestial dragons. So the Revolutionary Army's endgame is to bring these celestial dragons down from the top of the world. How is it that they are going to do that? What exactly is their plan to achieve this? So let's talk about this and also how it may end up relating to our current arc in Wano. Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So, before we actually get into this video, I just want to apologize, guys. I have been sick for the past week, and I probably still sound somewhat congested, somewhat awful, because I still kind of feel not great. So just a heads up for that. If I sound weird, that is the reason why. But anyway, if you've been reading One Piece long enough, you know that Oda has a habit of hinting where the story may go, or at least leaving pieces that will eventually connect when a character or a group's story arc concludes. And I really think that at this point in time, we can piece together the Revolutionary Army's entire plan and how it is that they want to go about bringing down these celestial dragons. Or if not the entire plan, at least part of it. And my basis for this is really just following what it is that they've been shown to have been doing in the story. So let's start this off by explaining how the Revolutionary Army operates, because I think that it is the most important evidence for this theory. So what the Revolutionary Army does is they act in secrecy. They visit all the various countries from across the world, specifically countries that may be tied to the world government, that are in some way mistreated, whether it be by the world government itself or their very own monarchs. Essentially, the world government has power because of their sphere of influence, the countries that are under their control. And their connection to these countries comes from the leaders of these countries. A country is not part of the world government unless their leaders pledge loyalty to the world government and the celestial dragons. So the Revolutionary Army comes in, they find these countries, these people that have been wrong, and they incite revolution by various means. And so I think that through the process of this revolution, many of these countries lose their ties to the world government. Maybe even sometimes through the influence of the Revolutionary Army, they actively declare themselves independent from the world government. Because I think that in a lot of these cases, the people within these countries don't feel as though the world government is there to protect them, because they are being ruled over by, and many times, cruel and corrupt monarchs. Frankly, I just think that the world government is probably very easy to hate, and overlooks many of these countries where things are going wrong. And so why is it, what is it that being a part of the world government actually brings you when your country is being attacked by pirates, ruled over by some awful king? Your people are dying, they're starving, they have to pay taxes for what purpose? But here's where things get a bit complicated, because the world government doesn't want to lose their constituent countries. But they also do not wish to actively and obviously fight against the revolution. Frankly, it's just a bad look. It's bad PR if every time a country wishes to become free of the world government, and they go through whatever struggles it is that is happening within the country, for the world government to come down with the smack hammer. How dare you try to free yourselves? It's a bad look. So in Dressrosa and recently in Wano, the world government's tactics and handling this were finally exposed. Kaido creates weapons, which he then sends to the broker Doflamingo. Doflamingo then sold these weapons to many various countries, and he was contracted by the world government. And as we learned in Wano, once Doflamingo was defeated, the world government was then forced to directly negotiate with Kaido and the Shogun for these same weapons. Meanwhile, if you've been following the Revolutionary Army's story arc, they've been interested in tracking weapons that Doflamingo has been distributing. Specifically, they are looking for who and where these weapons are being manufactured, which we now know is Wano and Kaido. But what exactly is the importance of the weapons? Why are the Revolutionary Army interested in them? Why is the world government contracting pirates in order to obtain them? Well, the reason is because they are used to resist the revolutions. The Revolutionary Army goes into countries and they start a revolution, and then the world government, who does not want to actively fight, who does not want it known that they are intervening in any sort of country affairs, is secretly using Doflamingo and Kaido to bring in weapons to these countries to fight and attempt to defeat the revolutions that the Revolutionary Army is creating. This is the true battle between the Revolutionary Army and the world government. This is low-key happening all across the world. And I really think that Oda has explicitly shown this to us. After Doflamingo was defeated, Oda panned to various countries at war, and the tides of the battle had changed. Countries relied on the weapons that Doflamingo provided in order to fight. And the Revolutionary Army later stated that it was a huge victory for them. And so some of you may be wondering why exactly the world government would need Doflamingo and Kaido's weapons. They probably produced their own weapons. I think the reason is because you don't want to be able to track the source, the origin of them. Keep in mind, I don't think that these countries have any idea of what's really going on. They just think that their country is wrong, they're starting a revolution, they're fighting for whatever cause that they happen to believe in, but they don't believe themselves fighting against the world government necessarily. I think that would change in a heartbeat if they happen to notice that their enemies that they are fighting against are fighting with Marine-issued rifles. And I think you also have to keep in mind the optics of the Marines themselves. Keep in mind that the Revolutionary Army said that the Marines and these various countries are not their enemies, the Celestial Dragons are. Now obviously this is not all of them, but in many cases the Marines are comprised of people like Kobe or like Garp. People who want to make the world a better place, people who do not want to fight in unjust wars. If anyone happened to notice large shipments of weapons being sent to various countries at war, or even sent to people like pirates and bandits and rebels, it starts to make a statement, it starts to build a picture that the world government wants no piece of, wants no part of. They do not want anybody to know that they are funding these wars. But just for the sake of being thorough here, I also said that the world government potentially sends weapons to rebels as well, revolutionaries. And I mean it when I say that because not every country is a part of the world government. What about in these countries that are not yet a part of the world government, that are soon to become part of the world government? Do you think that the world government maybe plays a role in starting revolutions to put monarchs in charge of those countries that would then become subordinate to them? You bet. This is the game that the world government is playing, one that they can't have their name tied to at all. So that is why they are desperate enough to potentially send Vegapunk to Wano in order to continue the supply of weapons. On one hand, if they send their own weapons to these countries, they would risk being exposed. On the other hand, if they do nothing and the supply of weapons stop, they risk losing on all fronts, potentially dozens, if not more, of countries leaving the world government in the span of a year. And their conquest of territory of countries that are not currently a part of the world government would be halted. So I started this video with the question of, what exactly is the Revolutionary Army's plan? And I think from this point, it seems pretty obvious. We haven't seen the Revolutionary Army very often, but one thing that Oda has absolutely focused on is the distribution of illegal weapons. For some reason, that's important. And the reason is, I think, is that if the Revolutionary Army can stop the supply of weapons to these various countries and continue to incite rebellion, then they will eventually whittle down the world government, they will eventually win. And so I think that this leads us nicely into Wano. Of course, we know that Doflamingo was distributing the weapons, that avenue was destroyed by the Straw Hats, thus the world government had to contract Kaido directly, but we're assuming at the end of Wano, Kaido is defeated as well. Wano is liberated, they lose all connection to the world government. The world government no longer has a source of illegal arms. Essentially, at that point in time, the Revolutionary Army would win this battle, and based on what I said just a second ago, you would assume would eventually win the war. But of course, we know that it's not going to happen this way. The world government is not just going to lose because Kaido has lost. I think instead what you're going to see is the world government's desperation in maintaining the powers they have already accumulated. I think Oda foreshadowed this at the end of the Reverie when the Bald Gorosei had this to say: "The world's equilibrium cannot be maintained forever. The time has come for a great cleansing. The time of deception and secrecy is just about over." I think that the Revolutionary Army has pushed the world government into a corner. In order to continue the fight, once Kaido is defeated, they have to act openly. We spent a long part of this video talking about how the world government does not want to send their own weapons to these countries. They don't want to in any way be tied to these wars. I think that once Kaido is defeated, that is no longer an option. You lose or you make your stance known. You oppose us, you fight against us, we will destroy you. There is no leaving the world government. And I do think that this is what the Revolutionary Army intended. This is what they expected to happen. This is the essence of their plan. All of these individual countries are not the true enemies of the Revolutionary Army. The Revolutionary Army has no interest in destroying the world government for what it stands for. They have no interest in fighting the Marines or fighting the pirates. They want to take down these celestial dragons, and in order to do that, they must expose them for who they are to the entire world. And in order to expose them, they have to bring their secrets out into the open. I think that this is the genius of the Revolutionary Army and the genius of Dragon. Destroy all the back channels that the world government operates within to do all of their shady dealings, so that they are forced to take responsibility for the things that they are doing across the world. How exactly will the world respond when they find out that many of the wrongs of the world are being funded and supported by these celestial dragons? The Revolutionary Army is about to start a great world war. The world government versus just about everybody. And I think, as we said earlier, Oda has foreshadowed the world government's counterpunch once it is that it's openly revealed what it is that they have been doing, how exactly they'll respond to that. It's time for a great cleansing. What do you do when all of the truths that you don't want out there are exposed? You destroy the history. It's time for another void century. I personally think that this is going to be a part of the story that grows in emphasis as the strats get nearer and nearer to the end of the Grand Line. They will of course leave after Kaido is defeated. They'll head to Elbaf, then we assume they'll find the Fourth World Poneglyph, eventually they'll find Raftel. But while this is all going on, a great war is going to be started in the backdrop. I think that you could very easily see the world government become very aggressive to anybody, any country who opposes them. Countries like Alabasta, I think, are in huge danger, literally being wiped off of the face of the map. And although this doesn't have a lot of substance right now, a possibility I just want to throw out there because it does make some sense to me, is if the Revolutionary Army has discovered that the source of the weapons is Kaido and Wano, there's not a whole lot that they can do by themselves in order to stop this supply. Basically, they would have to defeat Kaido, right? Infiltrate Wano, defeat Kaido, pretty easy, huh? How'd you go about doing that? Part of me really wonders if the Revolutionary Army's objective for attacking the Reverie is simply to begin a great game of chase, one that will end up and lead to Wano. The Revolutionary Army attacks the world government, they get the Marines to chase them, to follow them all the way to Wano, where they are then forced to confront and battle against Kaido. Keep in mind that the Marines are not responsible for the Celestial Dragon's actions in the black market. They don't know that it is important to the Celestial Dragons that Kaido remains in business. The Marines show up to the doorstep of Wano, war is going to start. And the Celestial Dragons and the Marines can't just let the revolutionaries go because it makes them look bad. I think that this is a strategically viable move and a possibility I just want to throw out there. But either way, guys, I think that this is the role of the Revolutionary Army within the story, to incite, to cause, to begin the final world war. And I think some people might say, well, isn't that what the Straw Hats are supposed to do? Isn't that what Luffy's supposed to do? I don't really think so. I think that Luffy's role, and the purpose really of traveling the Grand Line, tracking down the Poneglyphs, and finding Raftel, is in large part to unite all of the pirates together, to create a nation of pirates, to become the king of all pirates, so that he can lead the only force strong enough to in any way actually oppose the world government in battle, to essentially join this world war that has already begun and ended. But anyway, guys, that's pretty much all I had to say today, just something that I wanted to discuss. I don't think that it is mind-blowing, but I do think that this seems to be what the story is implying. And a topic of conversation, a question that I think is almost so obvious that a lot of people don't ask it, or think too much about it. But as always, I'm curious as to what you guys think. Share your thoughts in the comment section below. Like the video if you liked the video, dislike the video if you disliked the video. Make sure to subscribe if you want to be notified for my future content. And as always, guys, have a wonderful day.